It's crazy, Dan, that they're not invited just sends such a strong message as
Mm,
to where the younger royals stand on this issue, which is that I think especially the older generation. So we're talking, Peter and Zara, who are closer in age to Harry and William, in particular William, and the three of them are quite close, are looking at Harry and Meghan going, we just don't want any part of this dog and pony show that you two offer. This is going to be a happy occasion. And if Harry and Meghan are there, it's not a happy occasion anymore. It's stressful. It's tense.
A dog and pony show. That is how the people who grew up alongside Prince Harry now describe the prospect of having him and his wife at any family gathering. Not a difficult guest, not a complicated situation. A dog and pony show. And frankly, when you sit with those words for a moment, really sit with them, they tell you everything you need to know about where things stand between Harry, Meghan, and the rest of the royal family right now. Because this is not a story about a wedding invitation that got lost in the post. This is not an administrative oversight or a misunderstanding between cousins who have simply drifted apart. This is a deliberate, conscious, unanimous decision made by the younger generation of royals, the people who knew Harry best, who grew up alongside him at Balmoral and Sandringham, who stood beside him at the most difficult moments of his life to say, quite plainly, you are no longer welcome here. The wedding in question is that of Peter Phillips, the King's eldest grandchild, and a man who was, for many years, one of Prince Harry's closest companions within the family. It is the major royal gathering of the year, and Harry and Meghan have not been invited, not overlooked, not forgotten, not invited, while King Charles will be there, while Queen Camilla will be there, while William and Catherine will be there, while Edward and Sophie will be there, while Zara and Mike Tyndall will be there. And this is the detail that makes the whole thing quite breathtaking, while Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie will be there too. Let that sink in for just a moment, because we will be spending the next hour unpacking exactly what it means, why it happened, and what it tells us about the future of Harry and Meghan's relationship with the institution they walked away from, and apparently now desperately need back. The story broke through People magazine of all outlets, the very publication long used as Harry and Meghan's preferred American vehicle for sympathetic coverage. A friend of the couple told Hello magazine that Peter and Harry have simply not spoken for several years and lost touch. But that framing is doing an enormous amount of heavy lifting for a very uncomfortable truth. You do not lose touch with a cousin who walked beside you at your grandfather's funeral because you got busy. You lose touch because something happened. And we know exactly what happened and when. To understand the full weight of what has just happened, you need to understand who Peter Phillips is and what he represents within this family. Peter is the son of Princess Anne, the king's only sister. He holds no royal title. He has never sought the spotlight. He has spent his adult life operating quietly, professionally, and with a degree of dignity that many of his more prominent relatives might do well to study. He is, in the truest sense, a private man who happens to be a member of one of the most public families on earth. And he was, for a very long time, someone Harry considered a genuine friend within the family. Not a distant cousin at Christmas, not a face across a formal dining table, a real presence. When Prince Philip died and the family was fractured and anxious about how the funeral procession would unfold, when there were deep concerns about Harry and William walking in close proximity to one another for the first time since the rupture, it was Peter Phillips who was chosen to walk between them. That is not the role you give to someone who is merely a pleasant acquaintance. That is the role you give to a trusted, steady presence, a peacemaker, which makes his wedding guest list all the more significant. Because Peter Phillips did not forget to invite Harry. He chose not to. And that choice has been confirmed not by some hostile tabloid source, but by People magazine, the very outlet that has long served as Harry and Meghan's preferred vehicle for sympathetic coverage in the American press. When even your own propaganda machine is confirming the snub, you know the story cannot be spun. A source close to the couple told Hello magazine that Peter and Harry simply haven't spoken for several years and have lost touch. And that framing is interesting, isn't it? Lost touch. As though two old school friends gradually stopped calling. As though it were an organic, gentle fading of a friendship rather than a series of deliberate decisions. Nobody drifts away from a member of the royal family by accident. Nobody simply forgets to call. There was a moment. There was a decision. and we know exactly when it was made. But first, why does this particular event carry so much weight? Because it is not just a family wedding, it is a statement. Every person on that guest list represents a choice, and every person absent from it represents a choice too. The royal family does not issue accidental invitations. They do not forget people. When the guest list for the most significant royal social occasion of the year is drawn up, and two of the most famous members of that family are not on it, that omission is a message written in the most formal, permanent ink available.
I think people would applaud in the streets if it were to happen, because Harry and Meghan, especially Meghan, I think, she does not care about the royal family at all. The only thing she cares about is that she has a title she can lord over her famous friends because she's not as rich or successful as them.
Consider too what this means in terms of the reconciliation narrative. There has been persistent speculation in the press that some sort of quiet rapprochement has been underway, that back channels exist, that the king has been working to keep the door open, and perhaps at the very senior level some version of that is true. But Peter Phillips is not the king. He is a man who makes his own decisions. And his decision, made in full knowledge of its implications, is that Harry and Meghan are not part of his wedding day. That tells you everything about where the real sentiment within the family lies beneath the diplomatic language, beneath the carefully worded statements. The wedding of Peter Phillips to Harriet Spurling is a summer occasion set in the Cotswolds, an area where both grew up and which holds deep personal significance for them both. It is described as an intimate occasion, focused on close friends and immediate family. Intimate, in this context, apparently meaning the King, the Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, Zara and Mike Tyndall, and, as confirmed by the son, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Not intimate meaning small, intimate meaning carefully curated. For both Peter and Harriet, this is a second marriage, a fresh start, a celebration they have clearly thought carefully about who they want around them, about what kind of day they want to have, about the atmosphere they want to create. And it is in that context that the absence of Harry and Meghan becomes most revealing. This is not a grand state occasion where the guest list is dictated by protocol. This is a personal choice made by two people about who they want at their wedding, and Harry and Meghan did not make that list.
Harry and Meghan are the threat, not Beatrice and Eugenie. And it's not a big surprise, but I'm sure Harry feels a little bit of the slight for sure, and probably Meghan to a certain extent as well, because they really desperately need that royal connection to help them make cash.
Of course they do. And this really shows that they are not royal by all intents and purposes anymore.
Now, the inclusion of Beatrice and Eugenie is itself a fascinating subplot, because only months ago there was a serious question about whether either princess would be seen at any major royal occasion. Their father, Prince Andrew, had been at the centre of an extraordinary situation involving the release of documents connected to his late associate, and neither sister had been seen visiting him since. The feeling in royal circles was that they were managing their own reputations very carefully, very quietly. And yet here they are confirmed to be attending a major royal family wedding, apparently with the king's blessing and encouragement. Sources have told The Sun that the king always wanted both sisters to remain part of the family, and that Eugenie, currently in her second trimester of pregnancy with her third child, hopes to attend. A source said the royal family needs some good news, and nothing unites like a big church wedding. There is something quite extraordinary about that statement when you hold it alongside Harry and Meghan's exclusion. The royal family has made room deliberately, consciously, warmly, for two women whose father is currently one of the most controversial figures in recent royal history. They have decided that Beatrice and Eugenie are welcome, that they are not a threat, that having them there is a positive, unifying thing. And in the same conspicuous silence, they have made absolutely clear that Harry and Meghan are none of those things. The comparison is not flattering, and it was not accidental. Ask yourself this: at what point did Prince Andrew's daughters become less problematic in the eyes of the royal family than Harry and his wife? At what point did the family conclude that the complications associated with Beatrice and Eugenie are manageable, while the complications associated with Harry and Meghan are simply not worth it? That is a remarkable calculation, and the fact that the family has arrived at it quietly, without fanfare, tells you a great deal about how the Sussex brand is now perceived from the inside. So when did this happen? When exactly did the younger royals, Peter, Zara, and the others, make the decision to close the door? Because contrary to the spin being offered by Hello magazine, this was not a slow drift. There was a moment, a specific, memorable, entirely avoidable moment that those who witnessed it have never forgotten. It was the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee, a once-in-a-generation celebration, a moment of genuine national joy. And Harry and Meghan came back for it, or rather, they came back for the parts of it that suited them, on their own terms, in their own way, which is rather the whole problem in a nutshell.
I was actually there in front of St. Paul's Cathedral that day, and it was definitely a very interesting interaction because, of course, Harry and Meghan arrived and departed separately from everyone else as well. They refused to take the group transportation, and since they arrived late, it was rather embarrassing because Harry and Meghan had to scoot into their chairs because they weren't at the aisle, because there was a very clear and obvious sign that, hey, Harry and Meghan, you no longer have the status you think you do within this family in terms of being high-ranking royals and treated like Catherine and William, Charles and Camilla.
There it is. They arrived late. They had to scoot into their chairs. Because they had refused the group transportation that every other royal had taken, refused the shared van that would have placed them, quite visibly and publicly, in the same category as the other, lesser-ranked members of the family, and they found on arrival that the seating had been arranged to reflect a reality they were not yet prepared to accept. But it was what happened outside, or rather, what didn't happen, that the younger royals have never forgotten. Zara and Mike Tyndall were there, waiting for the group transport. Harry and Meghan tried to spark a conversation, and Zara and Mike, according to those present, simply didn't want to engage. Not rudely, not dramatically, just no. They had made their assessment. They had drawn their conclusion, and that conclusion was, there is nothing about this that is reasonable, and we want no part of it. Because think about what Zara and Mike had watched over the preceding years. The Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, Spare, interview after interview, accusation after accusation, revelation after revelation. And Harry and Meghan had arrived at a celebration of the late Queen, a woman they had publicly accused of institutional racism, had abandoned during a global pandemic, had not visited even as her health visibly declined, and they expected to be welcomed as though none of it had happened. That is not how family works, not even royal family. And there is a broader point here worth making. The younger royals, Peter, Zara, Beatrice, Eugenie, are not scheming courtiers calculating their position. They are people who love their family, who have built their own lives largely outside the spotlight, and who simply looked at the situation in front of them and reacted with basic human instinct. They protected themselves. When someone in your circle has demonstrated, repeatedly and publicly, that private moments are not safe with them, you stop sharing private moments. It is not complicated. It is not cruel. It is survival. Here is the thing about the younger generation of royals that often gets overlooked in the Harry and Meghan narrative. They are not passive bystanders in this story. They are not simply watching events unfold from the sidelines and keeping their opinions to themselves. They have made a decision, a clear, categorical, unanimous decision. And Peter's wedding is simply the latest and most visible expression of it. The decision is this: they are Team William, 100%. No asterisks, no private sympathies for Harry, no secret channels of communication, no behind-the-scenes attempts to broker a peace. They looked at everything Harry and Meghan did, the books, the interviews, the accusations, the Netflix deal, the relentless public campaign against the institution, and they made a choice about which side of that line they stand on. And it is not Harry's side.
The family is not in close touch with him now. Even those members of the family who were closer to him are less in touch with him now than they used to be. And many of them will have nothing to do with him whatsoever.
Lady Colin Campbell has been saying this for some time, and she has consistently been proved right. The isolation is not a media exaggeration. It is not the result of scheduling conflicts or geographical distance. It is deliberate. It is total. And it is something that Harry, if he is being honest with himself in the quiet moments, must feel acutely. Because these were not strangers. These were the people who knew him before he was a headline. Peter, who walked beside him at his grandfather's funeral, Zara, whose children grew up alongside his, Beatrice and Eugenie, who had always been described as particularly close to Harry within the cousin generation, who shared his experience of being simultaneously royal and slightly outside the very centre of it. And every single one of them has now placed themselves firmly on William's side of the family. Why? Not because William demanded it, not because there was some formal family meeting where loyalties were declared, but because when you strip everything else away, the younger royals made a very simple calculation. What do Harry and Meghan offer us versus what does being associated with Harry and Meghan cost us? And the answer to that calculation was not difficult to arrive at. What they offer: drama, tension, uncertainty, the constant possibility of being quoted in the next memoir or featured in the next documentary. What they cost: professional reputation, family harmony, the warm, uncomplicated closeness that comes with being on the right side of the most important relationship in the family, the one with William, the future king. When you lay it out like that, the choice becomes obvious, and the younger royals, to their considerable credit, made it clearly and stuck to it.
Harry and Meghan live within a miasma of toxicity, and they spread that to everyone they have in contact with. Peter and Zara were like, we're Team William 100% of the way. Our kids are close to them. We're close to them. And Harry and Meghan, they just don't offer anything.
A miasma of toxicity. It is a remarkable phrase and a remarkably precise one, because it captures something that purely factual reporting often struggles to convey: the felt sense of what it is like to be around Harry and Meghan at a family occasion. The tension, the calculation, the constant background awareness that anything said, any expression photographed, any moment shared could end up in a book, a documentary, a podcast, an interview, that nothing is safe, that nothing is private, that everything is potentially material. The younger royals, practical, private, professionally focused people, looked at that reality and decided they simply did not want to live with it. And who could blame them? They have their own lives, their own careers, their own children. They are not equipped with entire communications teams and legal departments. They cannot afford the reputational collateral damage of being seen alongside a couple who have spent years publicly attacking the institution those very royals represent. And there is something else worth saying plainly. When Harry and Meghan are present at any event, they do not come as guests, they come as a parallel story. Every photograph becomes about them. The wedding of Peter Phillips would cease to be Peter's wedding the moment they walked through the door. It would become a Harry and Meghan story. And Peter, who has devoted his life to being the very opposite of that, clearly decided he would not allow that to happen on his wedding day. That is not a snub. That is entirely reasonable. Think about the children of the younger royals. Zara and Mike's children, Peter's children from his first marriage, related to Archie and Lilibet, sharing bloodlines and family history, but growing up in an entirely different world, one without cameras, without memoir threats, without their parents' lives being turned into content. Those children deserve to celebrate at their uncle's wedding without becoming a news cycle, and their parents have simply decided to protect them. Which is, when you think about it, exactly what Harry claims he wants for his own children, but conspicuously fails to deliver. Now, let us be quite clear about something. This is not the first time Harry and Meghan have found themselves quietly excluded from a significant royal occasion. It is simply the most visible. The pattern has been building for years, steadily, brick by brick, occasion by occasion, until what we now have is something that cannot be dressed up as a misunderstanding or explained away as logistics. Think back to the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The seating arrangements at St. Paul's Cathedral told the story before a single word was spoken. Think about the King's coronation, an event that Harry attended alone, without Meghan, arriving and departing without integration into the family unit, photographed sitting not beside his brother or his cousins, but in the third row, flanked by people he barely knew. Think about the repeated occasions on which official royal engagements, charity events, and family milestones have unfolded without any Sussex involvement whatsoever.
The problem you've got here in a relationship with Meghan and Harry is this is a boy that was pretty much traumatised by media presence when he was little. He didn't really want any of this publicity. He was always attacking photographers. She's someone, ever since she was on the red carpet, who's craved publicity.
And that incompatibility between a man who grew up fearing the camera and a woman who has always performed for it is at the very heart of why the younger royals walked away. They understood that the Harry who emerged from this marriage is not quite the Harry they grew up with, the Harry who refused the group transport at St. Paul's, the Harry who obscures his children's faces in commercial posts while campaigning for their privacy, the Harry who testified about the damage of media intrusion and then allowed his 7-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter to appear in a post designed to sell candles. The younger royals knew the original Harry. They know the difference. There is also the question of trajectory. Because the pattern of exclusion is not static, it is worsening. Each successive royal event, each successive family milestone, each year that passes without genuine repair of the fundamental breach makes the next invitation less likely rather than more. And each time Harry and Meghan do something, a tell-all, a commercial post, a public complaint, it resets the clock. There is no accumulation of goodwill. There is only the latest incident. And the latest incident, almost without fail, makes reconciliation harder. It would be easy, and some will be tempted to lay the entire weight of this exclusion at Meghan's feet. To paint Harry as a passive victim of his wife's ambitions, dragged along in her wake, unable to navigate back to the family he was born into. But that reading, while emotionally satisfying in some ways, is ultimately too convenient, because Harry has made choices, deliberate, documented, irreversible choices. And those choices have consequences. He wrote the book, he gave the Netflix interviews, he sat with Oprah, he made the legal arguments, he issued the public statements. At every single juncture where he might have chosen silence or restraint, or a quiet return to the fold, he chose the opposite. And the younger royals, pragmatic people who have watched all of this unfold in real time, are not operating under the illusion that Harry has been an unwilling participant in his own story.
You can't say and do certain things around Harry and Meghan because you don't know if it'll show up in Netflix or the next Oprah Winfrey interview or the next book. And so the royal family has gotten to this point, I think. And although, again, I think Charles is still a little soft on Harry, they're like at this point with Harry still with Meghan, he's just not welcome to anything.
That is the reality. It is not that the royal family hates Harry. It is not that they have decided to punish him out of spite or score a point in some ongoing family feud. It is something far simpler and far more damaging to his long-term prospects. They cannot trust him. And you cannot include someone you cannot trust in the private, intimate, unguarded moments of family life. Because those moments for Harry are apparently always potentially on the record. How do you have a conversation at a wedding reception knowing that the person you are speaking with might reconstruct it later for a memoir? How do you relax, laugh, be yourself, say something slightly unguarded or imperfect in the way that all human beings do at celebrations? How do you do any of that knowing it might be catalogued? You cannot. And so the answer, for Peter and Zara and Beatrice and Eugenie and the rest, is simply not to put themselves in that position in the first place. The saddest part of all of this, and there is something genuinely sad about it, even for those of us who have watched Harry's choices with bewilderment, is that he appears not to fully understand why it is happening. The briefing from his side continues to frame the distance as something that has simply evolved organically, lost touch, drifted apart, as though there were no specific cause and effect, no clear chain of decisions that led here. But the rest of the family understands the chain of events perfectly well. They were on the receiving end of it. And there is one more thing worth saying about Harry's role in all of this. He is a 41-year-old man. He made the decisions he made with full knowledge of what he was doing. Whatever the dynamic within his marriage, the public record belongs to Harry as much as it belongs to Meghan. His name is on the book. His face is in the documentary. His voice is in the interviews. Responsibility cannot be outsourced entirely to a spouse, however dominant. Harry chose this, and the family, including the cousins who once loved him, is simply taking him at his word. Let us turn now to something that the wedding snub throws into particularly sharp relief, the question of what Harry and Meghan actually need from the royal family. Because this is not simply an emotional story about a family estrangement, it is also, quite nakedly, a commercial one. The Sussex brand, such as it is, derives its entire value from royal adjacency. Without the titles, without the connection, without the narrative of being part of the world's most famous royal family, what exactly are Harry and Meghan offering? He is a 41-year old man who served in the military and has written one book. She is a four-year-old former actress whose ventures a podcast, a lifestyle brand, a Netflix cooking show, an unlaunched fashion line have met with varying degrees of success. Neither description is especially compelling to a brand partner, unless you add, and they are members of the British royal family.
As her clout dwindled, as people lost interest in what she and Harry had going on, she was going to move to the next generation. That was the final card she had to play, Archie and Lilibet.
And that assessment is not ungenerous, it is simply accurate. The Sussex strategy has always relied on the implicit understanding that they remain, in some meaningful sense, royally connected. Every appearance at a royal-adjacent event, every photograph near a member of the family, every suggestion of a thaw or a reconciliation, these things have commercial value. They remind sponsors and partners and television executives that the product on offer is not merely two moderately famous Americans, but two people with a direct and living connection to the crown. Which is why exclusion from Peter Phillips's wedding is not simply a personal slight, it is a business problem. Every major royal event from which Harry and Meghan are visibly absent is another data point in the narrative that they are not, in any practical sense, part of the royal family anymore. And each of those data points erodes the very foundation on which their commercial value rests. The younger royals understand this dynamic perfectly well, which is why their unanimous rejection carries so much weight. They are not merely expressing a personal preference. They are, whether they intend to or not, participating in the steady, systematic dismantling of the Sussex brand. Every closed door is a signal to the market, and the market, as we shall see, is beginning to receive that signal loud and clear. And here is the particular irony that must sting most for Meghan. She has spent years cultivating exactly the kind of aspirational, lifestyle-focused brand identity that should, in theory, be commercially potent. The cooking show, the jam, the carefully curated Instagram aesthetic, the as-ever label, all of it built around the idea of Meghan as a woman of taste, warmth, and effortless grace. But none of it works without the royal halo. Remove the Duchess, and what you have is a lifestyle brand with no particular point of difference from the hundreds of others competing for exactly the same market. The royal connection is not just part of the brand, it is the entire foundation on which the brand rests, and that foundation is crumbling. While all of this was unfolding in the royal world, something else was happening simultaneously on Meghan's social media that deserves careful examination, because it speaks directly to the pattern of behaviour that has made the younger royals so determined to maintain their distance, and it does so in a way that is quite difficult to defend. Meghan posted an image. The image was a commercial post connected to a product designed to sell something, and it featured, briefly, and with their faces obscured, her children, 7-year-old Archie and 3-year-old Lilibet. The product in question was a candle. Now, on one level, you might say, faces obscured, brief appearance, not a big deal, and you would have a point if we were talking about any other couple. But we are not. We are talking about a man who has literally testified before lawmakers about the psychological damage caused by media intrusion into his own childhood. We are talking about a woman who has campaigned actively for children's online safety legislation. We are talking about two people who have made the protection of their children from public exposure one of their most loudly and consistently stated priorities.
Harry, you can't preach about how you're giving your children space out of the public eye while your wife has just posted another picture of them, photoshopped to sell a candle named after them. So you can't preach when you're doing the exact thing you claim to be so bad.
The contradiction is not a small one, and it is not one that can be smoothed over with the observation that their faces were obscured, because the issue is not facial recognition. The issue is the purpose of their inclusion. The children were there to sell a candle. Their presence, their existence, their youth, their adorability was being leveraged for commercial gain. By the same two people who have built an entire public identity around protecting children from exactly that kind of exploitation. There is also a naming issue worth noting. The candle in question has a name connected to the children. The children's names Archie and Lilibet are, it has been reported, domain registered and commercially held by their parents. Their identities are, in a very literal sense, part of the Sussex commercial infrastructure, and those children, at 7 and 3, cannot consent to any of it. They do not know what a brand strategy is. They do not know that their names and their likenesses are assets in a commercial portfolio. They are simply children, and they are being used. The younger royals who have watched William and Catherine work extraordinarily hard to give their own children some measure of private childhood will have noted all of this, not with triumph, with something closer to weary confirmation of what they already believed. And there is a broader cultural context here that gives this incident even more weight. There is a growing movement, particularly in the United States, to examine the ethics of parents who commodify their children for social media. Several American states have moved to legislate on the issue. The public mood is shifting. What was once tolerated as a quirk of the influencer economy is increasingly being seen for what it is, the exploitation of people who cannot protect themselves. And when the people doing the exploiting are the same people who have built careers campaigning for exactly the opposite, the hypocrisy does not merely offend, it astonishes.
Meghan Markle truly believes people like her fashion, which is just simply not true, and that she thinks she can really move product, which she should know at this point with as ever, is just simply not true. But Meghan Markle lives in the land of delusion, and so she is, I think, fully willing to try and do a fashion brand because, as ever, overall as a brand has largely failed. And so she's just constantly trying new things, hoping something works.
The fashion story is, in many ways, a perfect microcosm of the entire Sussex project. Eagle-eyed observers noticed that a sizing chart for t-shirts, adult and children's sizes, appeared briefly on the As Ever brand website before being swiftly removed. Was it a glitch? Possibly. Was it a deliberate tease to generate press coverage? Also possible. But here is the thing about sizing charts. You do not have one unless you are planning to sell something. And Meghan's spokesperson, who had previously told press outlets that there was no fashion brand coming, declined to comment when asked about it. So let us take stock of where the Sussex commercial empire actually stands. The podcast ended. The Netflix cooking show received deeply mixed reviews. As ever, the lifestyle brand that was supposed to capitalize on Meghan's much-discussed sense of style has, by most independent assessments, significantly underperformed. The jam sold out initially, yes, but sellouts are not the same as sustained commercial success, and the noise around the brand has been considerably louder than the revenue it appears to be generating.
She is very clever. Her problem is she's not clever enough. She lacks self-awareness. She doesn't realize she's too clever. That is a terrible dilemma to be in, that not recognizing your own limitations.
And that is exactly it, isn't it? The self-awareness problem. Because a person with genuine commercial instincts and genuine self-awareness would look at the current landscape, the failed podcast, the underperforming lifestyle brand, the cooling public interest, and conclude that now is precisely not the time to launch into one of the most brutally competitive markets in the world. Fashion is a business that has humbled people with far greater resources, far stronger existing audiences, and far more direct experience than Meghan Markle possesses. Even Victoria Beckham, a woman with a genuine, deep, decades-long connection to the fashion world, with a genuinely global profile, and with the benefit of her husband's extraordinary brand support, spent years building her label before it came anywhere close to turning a sustainable profit. The idea that Meghan Markle, at a moment when her cultural cachet is measurably declining and her commercial ventures are visibly struggling, can walk into that market and succeed where so many others have failed. That idea requires a level of self-belief that most objective observers would describe as something rather stronger than confidence. What is particularly revealing about the fashion brand speculation is what it tells us about the strategic thinking at the heart of the Sussex operation. A coherent brand strategy would consolidate before expanding. It would establish one venture on a solid foundation before launching the next. It would learn from the feedback the market has already provided. What the As Ever story suggests instead is a scattershot approach, throw enough things at the wall and hope something sticks. That is not strategy. That is desperation dressed up as ambition. And the market, whatever Meghan might believe, is not easily fooled. While Harry and Meghan navigate wedding exclusions and brand failures and hypocrisy headlines, something else entirely has been unfolding on the other side of the family divide. And it is worth pausing on it not to gloat, because that would be unworthy, but because the contrast is simply too instructive to ignore. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has recently returned from Italy, her first significant foreign visit since her cancer diagnosis, and the extraordinary year of recovery that followed it. And the reception she received was, by all accounts, genuinely moving. Warm, enthusiastic, personal. Italy embraced her. And those of us who have been willing her forward through what has been an unimaginably difficult personal journey watched those images and felt something close to relief. She looked well. She looked joyful. She looked like herself.
This event and this trip was so well needed. It's so good to see Catherine out and about because unfortunately as well, William and the children haven't really been able to do tours either. And I think for the future strength of the monarchy, it's would be great for them to be able to do some of these more long-term foreign royal trips type of thing. So I think this was definitely a very, very good stepping stone. Obviously, she got a wonderful and warm reception. Italy is very close to the UK, so it's not like she's too far away.
She is also, it has been reported, tipped to join William at the Earthshot Prize in India later this year, which would mark her first Earthshot trip since Boston in 2022. Her absence from the Singapore ceremony the following year was, at the time, attributed to concerns about Prince George. With the benefit of everything that has come since, it is now understood as the first visible sign that something was already wrong, which makes her presence in India, if it comes to pass, not just a logistical matter, but a deeply symbolic one, a return, a continuity, a statement about who Catherine is and what she is capable of. And William, for his part, has been making moves of his own. He has publicly confirmed that he is paying £300,000 a year in rent for his family home, £100,000 more than the previous tenants paid. He has announced plans to sell a fifth of the Duchy of Cornwall to build homes and support nature, with profits channeled into social and environmental projects. These are not the gestures of a man coasting on inherited privilege. These are deliberate, transparent, accountable choices made specifically to address criticism and to demonstrate what modern responsible royal stewardship actually looks like. The contrast with Meghan's candle posts and sizing chart mysteries could not be more complete, and the younger royals who have chosen this side of the family to align themselves with will have noticed that too. There is something quietly powerful about the William and Catherine story right now. They are not doing anything dramatic. They are not making grand gestures or giving headline-generating interviews. They are simply getting on with it, with the work, with the family, with the long, patient business of building trust. And that quiet consistency, placed alongside the constant Sussex turbulence, speaks louder than any press release. The royal family does not need to win arguments against Harry and Meghan. It simply needs to keep functioning well. And it is. Let us return, for a moment, to the children. Because the candle story and the broader pattern of how Harry and Meghan have approached their public children's strategy deserves more attention than it has generally received. Because it reveals something fundamental about the values at the heart of the Sussex operation.
Based on one that wants to be out of the public light, doesn't want his children involved, and that's why we see keep them get the back of their heads, and one that's desperate to utilise that.
And utilise the children.
There is a growing movement, particularly in the United States, to scrutinise the way social media parents, influencers, celebrities, public figures use their children as content. Several American states have already moved to legislate on this. The concern is not merely aesthetic. Child development professionals are clear on the point. The damage from early commercialization comes not from fame itself, but from the removal of a private developmental stage, a period during which a child's identity forms without an audience. Without the weight of public expectation, without the knowledge that they are, in some sense, a product. Harry, more than almost anyone alive, understands this from the inside. He has spoken about the consequences of growing up as a public child in agonizing detail. He knows what it costs. He lived the aftermath of it for decades. And yet his children at 7 and 3 are already appearing in commercial content, already having their names trademarked and domain registered, already being shaped as the next generation of the Sussex brand, not by the press, not by the paparazzi, by their own parents. It is, when you consider it carefully, one of the most genuinely troubling aspects of the entire Sussex story, because it is one thing to make choices about your own public life. It is quite another to make those choices on behalf of children who cannot consent, cannot object, and cannot yet understand the implications of the decisions being made in their names. And when those choices are being made by the same people who have built careers on demanding greater protection for children from exactly this kind of exposure, the word that comes to mind is not ambition. It is something considerably less flattering. Compare that with George, Charlotte, and Louis, 3 children who are objectively more famous than Archie and Lilibet, who will one day occupy the most prominent roles in the British royal family, and who are nonetheless being given the most fiercely protected private childhood their parents can manage. William and Catherine share glimpses, carefully chosen, warmly human, genuinely authentic glimpses. But the children's lives, their schools, their friendships, their everyday moments are guarded with extraordinary care, because their parents have chosen protection over publicity every single time. So where does all of this leave Harry and Meghan in relation to the royal family? Not the official, diplomatic version of that relationship, the carefully worded statements about ongoing hopes for reconciliation and doors always being open. The real version, the one expressed not in press releases but in guest lists. The honest answer is, the relationship, in any meaningful sense, no longer exists. Not with the younger generation, not with the cousins who grew up alongside Harry, not with the people who, 5 or 6 years ago, might have been described as his peer group within the family. Those relationships have been assessed, weighed, and found to be not worth the cost of maintaining. The door has not been slammed. It has simply, quietly, permanently closed.
I think especially the older generation, so we're talking, Peter and Zara, who are closer in age to Harry and William, in particular William, and the 3 of them are quite close, are looking at Harry and Meghan going, we just don't want any part of this dog and pony show that you two offer. This is going to be a happy occasion. And if Harry and Meghan are there, it's not a happy occasion anymore. It's stressful. It's tense. You have to manage so much.
And the Beatrice and Eugenie dimension is, in its own way, the most pointed element of all. The official briefing line around their inclusion is that the king wanted them there, that the family needs good news, that nothing unites like a big church wedding, all of which is true, but it is also, implicitly, a comparison. If the reasoning for including Beatrice and Eugenie is that their presence is unifying and their complications manageable, then the reasoning for excluding Harry and Meghan is precisely the opposite. Their presence is divisive. Their complications are not manageable. They are not a net positive to a family occasion. They are a net negative. That is a devastating verdict, and it has been delivered not by press critics or royal commentators or social media gossips, but by the family itself. In the clearest possible language, the language of a wedding invitation. There are reports that Harry, in particular, feels the slight, that he is aware of the symbolism, that he understands what it means to be excluded from a family gathering that includes not just his senior relatives, but his contemporaries, his childhood companions, the people he played with as a boy. Whether he is prepared to acknowledge the reasons for that exclusion is, of course, another matter entirely. There is a very significant difference between feeling a slight and understanding why it has occurred, and Harry has not yet demonstrated any great capacity for the latter. The really difficult truth, the one no amount of press management can paper over, is that the reconciliation Harry's team periodically claims is making progress simply is not happening at the level that matters. Whatever conversations may or may not be occurring between Harry and his father, the broader family has made its position clear. No amount of back-channel diplomacy changes the fundamental reality that Harry was not on the list when the wedding invitations were written. Step back for a moment. Look at the full picture, not just the wedding invitation and the candle post and the sizing chart mystery and Catherine's Italian triumph. Look at the whole sweep of where we are. Harry and Meghan are, at this moment, in a uniquely difficult position, one that is largely of their own construction, which makes it all the harder to navigate out of. They have alienated the institution that gave them their value. They have alienated the family members who might have acted as bridges back to that institution. They have pursued a commercial strategy that depends on royal adjacency, while simultaneously burning the bridges that provide it. And they have done all of this while maintaining with remarkable consistency the position that they are the aggrieved parties that things were done to them rather than by them. The royal family, meanwhile, is doing something quite interesting. It is not retaliating. It is not issuing dramatic counter-briefings or gestures of rejection. It is simply living. William and Catherine are doing their work, raising their children, modernizing the institution with transparency and accountability. The younger royals are getting married in the Cotswolds and inviting the people they want there. The king is encouraging his nieces to remain part of the family. Nobody is talking about Harry and Meghan at all, really. And that silence, that simple absence of drama, is perhaps the most damaging thing of all. Because Harry and Meghan have built their entire identity around being in conflict with the royal family, the interviews, the book, the documentary, all of it depends on the narrative of a family at war. And what happens when the other side simply stops fighting? When the royal family absorbs the blows, carries on, and proves, by the sheer ordinariness of its continued functioning, that it does not need Harry and Meghan to thrive, the narrative collapses. The product loses its tension. The commercial rationale for the whole enterprise begins to dissolve. That is where we are. Peter Phillips' guest list is not just a family decision. It is a data point in a much larger story, the story of an institution quietly, methodically, and without drama, outlasting the people who tried to bring it down. And the extraordinary thing? The institution is not even trying. It is simply being itself, carrying on, celebrating weddings, paying rent transparently, planning trips to India, while Harry and Meghan somewhere in California watch another door close.
Meghan constantly seeks out, though, fame and attention at the expense of her family and her children. And they could live completely different lives. They don't have to do any of this, but she wants to. She needs the fame. She needs the attention. And unfortunately, Harry, if he truly wanted privacy, if he truly wanted the life he claims to, he picked the completely wrong spouse to make that happen.
A dog and pony show. We began there and we end there, because that phrase, so casually delivered, so casually devastating, contains the entirety of what has gone wrong. Not a tragedy, not a conspiracy, not a campaign of persecution by a jealous institution. A dog and pony show. Two people who could have had something real and chose instead to perform. And while they perform the candle posts and the sizing charts and the commercial content featuring children who cannot consent, the rest of the family is gathering in the Cotswolds on a summer day, celebrating something real, a marriage, a beginning, the ordinary, extraordinary business of family life, without Harry and Meghan, and, from the sound of it, all the better for it. Now, I want to ask you something. Really think about it. If you were one of Harry's cousins, if you were Peter or Zara, someone who grew up alongside him, who knew him before all of this, at what point would you have made the same decision they did? And do you believe deep down that Harry truly understands why he was not on that guest list? I would genuinely love to know what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. This community always has the most thoughtful, honest perspectives, and this story deserves a proper conversation. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It truly means more than I can say, every single one of you who watches, who comments, who shares. If this video gave you something to think about, or framed something you'd been feeling in a way that finally made sense, please do give it a like. It takes 2 seconds, and it makes an enormous difference to how many people get to see this story told properly. And if you are not already subscribed, please do hit that button now. We are here every single day with the stories that matter, told the way this audience deserves to have them told. Share this one with someone who will have a strong opinion, because they absolutely will. Thank you. I will see you tomorrow.